The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us here tonight for another one of Player Development's grassroots webinars. Well, we'll be starting shortly. Just going to give a few more minutes for everyone to jump in, maybe straggling a little bit behind. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Ontario Soccer's Player Development webinar. Today we'll be talking about a culture of excellence, turning core values into core behaviors with Coach Reed Maltbie. He's an individual with 30 years plus experience as a coach and an educator with a master's degree and background in sports psychology and early childhood education. Since then, he's taken on a role as the Chief Content Officer for the Changing the Game project, which is fulcral in touching on youth sports subjects in North America. He's also been on TED Talks in 2015 and was a speaker at our Ontario Soccer Summit in 2018. At the end of this webinar, you'll be able to have access, if you already haven't, to some of the coaching tool cards that he's created and provided links for, as well as the Excellence Equation, a recent project that he's launched. But without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Coach Reed. Please, if you have any questions during the webinar, please type them in. We'll do our best to answer them throughout, but at the end, we will do a live Q&A where we'll be announcing questions to Reed and allowing him to speak to them. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. How are you all? I'm going to jump right in because I've got a packed webinar for you all tonight. I want to talk about cultures of excellence and how we turn the core values that we have within our organizations into core behaviors, which allows our organization to become a living and breathing organism that displays what matters most to us. So as I jump in, let me make sure I've got this. There we go. If you've seen my Warriors Not Winners talk, then you understand where I'm headed with this. I'm going to talk about all of the values that we need in our athletes to become these warrior athletes, instead of being focused on outcomes and trophies and cutting corners and a win at all costs mentality. We really want to teach our athletes values that allow them to succeed in life, that are more mastery focused, process focused, excited about a shared purpose. And so we call it a values-led, purpose-driven culture. And it can be in a team, it can be an entire organization. And when we do that, we're creating what I like to call a culture of excellence. And the reason why I talk about cultures of excellence versus things like high performance, one, it's language you all understand because you talk about excellence within Ontario Soccer. But two, a culture of excellence, excellence is something that everybody can achieve. When you start talking about high performance is something that it sort of limits who can get there. It's a standard that only Olympians get to, or only world-class athletes get to, or only the top team get to, or only one athlete can get that time, or score that many goals, or be involved in that type of level of play. But excellence is from top to bottom within a culture, which then unlocks every athlete has that opportunity to achieve their own personal excellence. So that's why I talk a lot about excellence, and you'll see it tonight. But let me talk about culture. I just saw this the other day on Twitter. Somebody posted, I've come across a few coaches in recent weeks, months that feel culture is overrated. Culture is what we do, so just get on with it, is one quote that comes to mind. I agree, and it most certainly is on trend. Yes, the word culture has become a trend, and there are books out like The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle that sort of show that it's become something we talk about. And when we talk about teams like the Golden State Warriors, and we talk about teams like the New Zealand All Blacks, and we talk about what happens with Olympic cultures within governing bodies, everybody says, well, that's something that's something we just do. But the problem with culture is, and my biggest fear with it is, a culture evolves naturally. It's your choice to ignore it or impact it, but it will evolve. Think about teams that you've been around where they all tend to value the same things and behave in the same way negatively. That's because nobody wanted to directly affect or impact that culture. They just ignored it and said, well, that's just something we do. Culture's overrated. I don't work on culture. I don't have time to focus on culture. I have too much I have to teach. And when we start to see culture as something that's overrated or too trendy or a fad, that's when we start to ignore it. And when we ignore cultures, they go bad very quickly because nobody is there to champion it, to guard it, and to carry it forward. And a great example actually is the New Zealand All Blacks. They have this amazing culture that they've had for 114 years. But as you all know, and we talked about it when I talked about Warriors Not Winners at the Ontario Soccer Summit, and if you've ever heard me speak before, the problem with a culture like that is you always have to be intentional with that culture. So what happened with the All Blacks is at one point in time in the early 2000s, their culture was suffering because nobody was intentional anymore. They just figured it's what we do. It's just something that we are, and we don't have to worry about it, and we have too much other things to do. And they had to revamp it. And if you've seen recently, they're back in the news with some negative things. And that's because, in the opinion of a lot of us, they lost that one champion. They had one or two players who were at the head of that. Richie McCall comes to mind. And Richie McCall exemplified that culture for everybody and kept them on task. So that's why I'm talking about culture of excellence tonight. And yes, it sounds faddish. It sounds like something that's trendy. But I'm telling you now, if you ignore culture, it will break down all of the teaching, all of the coaching that you're trying to do very quickly. So let's jump right into how do we build a culture of excellence. I'm going to use the Warriors Not Winners as a basis, the mindsets behind it, the psychological constructs. So we'll talk about 5 psychological constructs. And in each of those constructs, we'll try to shift our athletes from this extrinsic or from one side to the other side so that our athletes are all on the same page and they're starting to share in the same values, and you'll see it come out. So first one is motivation. Athletes tend to be either extrinsically or intrinsically motivated, and you can see on the screen. Extrinsically motivated athletes are outcome oriented. They focus on trophies. They have this external voice where it's something outside of them that's driving them versus something internal. And there's a selfishness about it. It's a what's in it for me kind of mentality. And because there's something outside, they're constantly being driven for it. The intrinsic motivation shifts. They become very process oriented. The outcomes will happen, but only if I embed myself in the process. Purpose matters to an intrinsically motivated athlete. They do things for something other than the glory or the victories or the outcomes. They do it for something that drives them. I was actually editing the Way of Champions podcast today, and Dr. Jim Taylor was talking about the fact that some people, they'll go in there, but actually it was John O'Sullivan was talking about some people, they'll just go in their backyard and they'll work for hours and hours and hours on something, and you realize, oh my gosh, they're totally intrinsically motivated. I don't have to go out and drive that person to do that work. There's something inside them that's clicked. That's that internal voice speaking to them, letting them know that they have to do this for themselves, not for anybody else. And of course, in the process of being internally focused like that, you become very selfless because you care less about the outcomes and trophies. You get so focused on the process that you care about everybody else who's in the process with you. So to shift somebody to an intrinsically motivated situation, what we want to do is we want to start teaching our athletes to chase purpose, not product. Start using language around purpose with your athletes. Outcomes will come. Goals shouldn't be focused on winning seasons and getting trophies. And trust me, coaches, I am just as guilty. I made a bet with a team one time, and I've told the story before, that if they won state cup 18 months from that moment, I'd let them do whatever they wanted to my hair. And then I realized about midway through that we were chasing a product, and we got too focused on that. And so we had to shift back to purpose. Why does it matter that we win? What do we do to get there? What's the process? And so thankfully I hope that team learned how to chase purpose. But in the beginning, we were just chasing some external goal outside of us. So you have to be process focused with your athletes and habit. What does this look like? How do you turn these core values or this idea into behaviors? Well, the values that come out of intrinsically motivated athletes are drive, passion, self-awareness, confidence. Think about those intrinsically motivated athletes who you've just seen where they have that, they understand what they need to work on, they understand where they're going next, they understand what matters most to them, and they have that drive and confidence and passion to get there on their own. For our athletes, the easiest way to do this for them is to create purpose. Here's what I mean, coaches. It's very easy to walk away tonight, go to your teams, talk with your teams about your why. Share why you coach. Share why you're here. Share why it matters that you're working with these particular athletes. If you share your purpose, and then here's the important one, ask them their why. Ask your athletes why they play. Why are you here? What matters most to you? What is your reason for being with us? And when you start to talk about this purpose with each athlete, you're digging deep into what matters most. You're actually speaking to the athlete's heart. And that, for me, all the excellence equation I talk about, once athletes feel like they have a sense of self and they have a sense of belonging with a group, but more importantly, that they get to bring their full self to the group and that this is about them and not about other people, then that intrinsic motivation starts to come out. So with your teams, start to have conversations about purpose. What is our purpose as a team? What is your purpose, Johnny? Here's my purpose. What is your purpose, Susie? Let's start to find a shared purpose. The next piece of the puzzle is locus of control. And again, it's external versus internal. Athletes that have this external locus of control, they don't feel they have any control. They'll always blame field conditions and referees and not enough playing time and the other team, and they'll never look inward. There's a low accountability in external locus of control athletes. They never actually see the things they've done wrong. And we've heard this from pro athletes, post-game interviews, and we ask the best player on the team, what happened tonight? And it's, my teammates didn't block for me. My teammates didn't run their routes right. My teammates didn't do their jobs. My teammates this. It's always pushing the accountability onto other people and blaming those other people, and they become problem focused. My son's going out for high school soccer. He's taken a couple of years off. So he asked me last night, hey, Dad, will you coach me? I mean, that's one of the greatest moments in my life, because I thought at one point in time I was the reason he quit playing, because of conversations we used to have that I accidentally didn't even know I was setting him up to be outcome focused, because I always asked him, did you score, if I didn't see his games? And so it became about scoring. And when he stopped scoring, he thought maybe that he wasn't good enough or he wasn't worthy in my eyes. Long conversations later, I've got him back around where he's asking me to coach him again. So we go down to the field and we're working and we're talking. And I start asking him about, well, it's been a couple years and these other kids are still playing. And how do you feel about that? And he says, that's okay, Dad. I'm just going to control what I can right now, which is getting myself ready. And I can't focus on that other stuff. So my son has moved from a problem focus to a solution focus. How can he fix the fact that he's taken a couple of years off? He can work out. He can get touches on the ball. He can give it his very best. And you know what? If it doesn't work out, he said, I'll try again the next year. So he feels full control over everything now. He feels high accountability. And a lot of time there's a solo shared blame with people who, if I could slow it down. Sorry, guys, I do talk fast. There's a shared solo blame with an internal locus of control team. It's those teams where the quarterback or the captain or the best leading scorer after the game goes into the interview, and when they say, hey, you guys lost tonight, what happened? They're the first to say, I didn't bring it for my team. My passing wasn't on. I wasn't reading the defense well. I didn't keep my feet moving in the pocket. I wasn't finding gaps to play balls through. I didn't have a good first touch. It's on me. But at the same time, what you hear from those types of teams is then everybody wants to share in that. No, it wasn't just him. I did this wrong too. I play a part in it. So they walk away, as my son did, with a solution focus. We weren't there tonight. What can we do to be there next time we play? So how do we shift our athletes, and what values do we get out of being an internal locus of control? Athletes who start to realize that they have full control over their playing experience, full control over their learning behaviors, and over the outcomes around them and the processes that they use, they become problem aware. They become, but they also become solution focused. And what I mean by that is, we want our athletes to see the problems around them. We don't want them to stop and focus on those. We want them to start coming up with the solutions to them. I had a leader when I was younger who said, Reed, anytime you come into my office, I want you to come with a solution, not a problem. That's how we want our athletes to be. When we freeze our athletes in a training session, we don't want to point out the problems right away. Maybe it's just a freeze. What do you see? And they may say, I see this. Here's how we solve it, coach. Now you've got athletes who are aware of what's happening problem-wise, but they're looking for solutions. So we say it's see it, solve it with our athletes. See it, solve it. That's a habit of ownership, where athletes start to take accountability and start to understand their role in the victories and the setbacks within their own organization and with their own progression or development. So the values that come out of that: empowerment. Athletes who have a high internal locus of control, they feel an empowerment. There's accountability and problem solving. Athletes with locus of control who know that they have full control of everything, there's a problem solving mentality that happens. I can fix this, and I'm going to figure out how. So coaches, here's your takeaway for this psychological construct. Transfer power to your athletes. It's as simple as giving them the opportunity to run a couple minutes of halftime. Go to them ahead of time, set them up so they know it's coming, and tell your athletes, you'll get 3 minutes. When you come over for halftime, I'm going to give you 3 minutes as a team to discuss what went really well in the first half and something you want to try in the second half. Notice we skip the problems. They'll find the problems, but we don't want to say, what did we do wrong? No, what can we do? What can we do in the second half to correct that? So you say something you want to do or try in the second half. That's all they need to come up with. Give them 3 minutes, you come back over, and then you have a conversation around it. What you're beginning to do is your athletes are beginning to feel like this is their experience, like they have control in the situation. And because of that, they have higher accountability. Because when they go out into the second half, they came up with the solutions and they talked about what that was going well that they wanted to keep doing. It was their decision. So they start holding each other and themselves accountable for how they behave. If you're a fan of Mark Bennett, it's the whole idea of the rule of 3. Your athletes, first the individual and then the team, should be starting to solve things and provide their own feedback. And we as coaches begin to take a step back. We are still vital to the process, but we don't have to over control it or joystick coach them. Transfer power, that's a big key, and you can do it tomorrow at training. Simple as, if it's not letting them run the halftime, as simple as give them limited choices. We can play game A or game B. Which do you want to do? This is your practice. You make the call. And now your athletes feel power, and they want to come back to practice because they feel like they have a say in all this. Next one, mindset. And again, I want to gloss over it because I want to get into the takeaways for the mindset piece of it. But if you know Carol Dweck's work, we are either fixed or growth mindset oriented. It can shift throughout our lifetime. It can shift, more importantly, based on the words those around us are saying to us and our own little voices are saying to us. So how do we shift our athletes from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset? I saw a hand raise. Pardon me a second. We'll see. Okay. From a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. Well, fixed mindsets think short term. They really don't think about effort. It's that kid that's been praised too much with no feedback, or they've just, you're so smart mentality, or you're so good. They get in front of Simon Cowell and American Idol and they melt down when they told, well, you probably should get a voice coach. And they say, well, mom's always told me I was a great singer. It's because we did them a disservice by not actually giving them valuable feedback. And they seek perfection. Perfectionist athletes are extremely dangerous because it's an obstacle to their own success, and it is a cyclical downward spiral for them. They will seek that perfection and get excited about it, and then they will realize they can't get to it, and they plummet emotionally over perfection. They've done research on professional football players who have said, even on the plane ride home after winning the Super Bowl, which is the greatest accomplishment any pro football player can get in the U.S., even on the plane ride home from the Super Bowl, within 24 to 48 hours, they already feel depressed because they say, is that all there was? I thought there'd be more. We need to shift our athletes to that growth mindset, long term. It's about effort. It's the survivor mentality. The people that go on Survivor that say, I just wanted to prove I could do it and I can do anything and everything. There's a famous Survivor contestant named Siri who's been on 3 times. First time she went on, she was a couch potato. She wanted to prove to her kids that she could do more with her life and that they could do more with their lives than sit on a couch and watch TV. She was asked back as an all-star, and then she went back as a game changer. And what's important is in the game changer episode, she failed her team crossing a balance beam out in the water. It was a floating balance beam, and she hated water anyway. It was not; those were never her favorite. She loved the puzzles and stuff. Those were never her favorite challenges. Her team was just distraught that she lost them the reward. Everybody finished and she's still out there. And Jeff Probst says, Siri, we can quit now, none the wiser. We wouldn't blame you. Or we'll stay right here out in this water in the rain until you finish that balance beam. Her team all swam over to the balance beam and cheered her on and helped her until she finished. Tears in her eyes, greatest moment of her life. And in the after show, she said, that was the greatest moment of my life because I became a survivor. I told people that if you put your mind to it and you give it your best effort, anything is possible. And I'm better today than I was yesterday because of that. And that's that everyday excellence. Like I said at the beginning, all my thoughts and research and work around the excellence equation is the idea that we have to stop defining performance based on outward measures and start defining it based on inward opportunities within our children. Every child on our team can reach excellence. Not all of them can get to perfection. Not all of them can be the leading scorer. Not all of them are going to play for certain teams. But every kid we coach has an opportunity to be a better person and better athlete today than they were tomorrow. And if we start getting them down that path of seeking everyday excellence, we help them. Avoid perfection, seek everyday excellence. If we start teaching our kids how to seek excellence rather than trophies and outcomes and elitism If we tell every child that they have a right to be great in their own way, then it's amazing what we can unlock in them. This is the idea of marginal gains. And if you're familiar with Brailsford out of England working with Sky Racing, the cycling team, you know he said we're going to make 100 little changes over 100 days, and that's 100% improvement. That's what you want to do with your athletes, is getting them to start thinking about, what can I do today that makes me a little bit better than yesterday? You know what? We're not going to win league in a season or an overnight. I'm not going to become the best player in the province overnight, but I can be better than I was yesterday. And that moves me along that path. When we start talking about the pyramid and elitism, the pyramid is like Mount Everest to our children. It is big, it is daunting, and it is scary because people don't make it to the top. But if we start talking about every step they can take along the way, today, all we need to do is get this far along that journey. They don't need to make it to the top. Then we start breaking it down for them into those marginal gains. The values that come out are effort, work ethic, resilience, and grit. Some of my all-time favorite ones: resilience and grit, the ability for our athletes to bounce back from setbacks, and the ability for our athletes to keep going in the face of adversity. If they know that adversity makes them better, if they know that mistakes happen and the key is to learn from them and get a little bit better, they become these gritty, resilient, just completely hardworking athletes, and that's what we want. So what does it look like for these athletes? We have to start valuing hard work. Very easy. In your next training session, you should be looking at your athletes and rewarding those who are putting in the effort as much as those who are accomplishing the skills. I was always guilty of this. I was a good jobber. Not only did I use the wrong language by saying good job, because my athletes had no idea what good job meant. Like, okay, what did I do? Coach, I did a good job. Please tell me what it is I did so I can repeat it and so my teammates can repeat it. But I was also rewarding those who got it right and ignoring those who were still working hard at it. Imagine that you're that kid, because mine were, and at times in my career, I was that one too, who couldn't quite get the skill yet. And you're seeing all your teammates getting the attaboys and attagirls and the good jobs because they're accomplishing it and you're not. At some point in time, you're going to decide, is this worth it to me? When you're younger, that's what you think. Is this worth it to me? When you value hard work, two things happen. When you reward an athlete and say, Susie, oh my goodness, you are so close to getting that skill. Love how hard you're working. You should be so proud of yourself for that work ethic. You are almost there. How can we get it together? I'll help you. How can we get there together? When you say things like that, what you've done is, one, you've begun to reward the athletes who are in different spots on that non-linear development pathway. As you all know, it is not a straight upward line. It's this weird wavy up and down roller coaster of a line for our kids. You're rewarding those kids who aren't at the other spots as some of the other higher achievers at younger ages. You're rewarding the whispering talents that will come out later in their career. The second thing you're doing, though, and this is what's important, is when you start valuing hard work, your high achievers on your team at any age, they see that and they realize that work matters too. They're no longer those kids that get the attaboys and good jobs and you're so smarts and you're so goods that they stop working because they figure, I was endowed with a gift. I was born a great athlete. And they start thinking, wow, is that what it takes? We get rewarded and encouraged for our effort as well. They become hard workers too. My daughter, I told the story before, we were told at one point in time that she probably wouldn't become valedictorian, even though she was testing off the charts on all of her IQ tests and school tests and reading years above her grade level, because the counselor said too many years have gone by where we've all just said, you're so smart, and praised her for being good and not praising her effort, that she hasn't learned how to put in the work ethic. She learned in high school, and she sees it now because she had teachers in high school who started to demand effort. They didn't care about the outcomes. And she's now talking to her siblings about that. Hey, it's about the work. Don't think about the grades right now. Put in the work. So it happens if we start valuing hard work. The next one, goal orientation. Very simple one. I'm actually going to push this one in through because we all understand. Most athletes are focused on the arrival, not the journey. They talk about the glory that they'll get and the college scholarships and making the top teams, but they have no vague steps, or they have no steps to get there. It's very vague. How are you going to get there? I don't know. But when you talk to athletes like Katie Ledecky, US swimmer, she talks about she knew at what age she needed to swim what times. She knew At 14, if I want to achieve my goals, if I want to climb my Everest, at age 14, I need to be swimming these times to get there. And she trained based on that. She had steps along the way. She didn't just say, I'm going to be the greatest swimmer in the world and I'm going to win a medal. She knew at 14 and 15 and 16 and 17 where she needed to be to give herself an opportunity. That's creating SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time sensitive. We want to shift our athletes' goal orientation to this journey. We want them to be more concerned with the values they're learning along the way and developing and honing than whether they're going to get glory for the things they do now or when they get there. We want them to have very clear paths. All of your athletes have goals. It should be on us as coaches to talk to them. What is your goal for this? Why are you here? How can I help you achieve your goal? And then when they tell us, we've got to start building that clear pathway. Okay, this is what you want to accomplish. What does that look like? What does that look like a year from now? What does that look like in the next 3 months? What's that look like monthly? What does that look like daily? What are those little things? I'm working with a sales team right now, and they have quarterly and annual goals. And we break them down into, okay, here's the goal. Here's how you need to get there. And by the way, here are the steps you need to take each day. So when they show up at the office, they know, if I want to get to my goals, that number at the end of that journey, then I've got to do A, B, and C every day when I walk into the office. They have SMART goals. And they care more about the journey. They're getting so excited about the daily activities and seeing that needle move for themselves that the goals, they celebrate them, but they're not as exciting as they used to be, because they're like, okay, what's the next goal? What's the next mountain I can climb? Because it's not what you get when you arrive. It's who you become along the journey. And this is something we should talk to all of our athletes about. It is not what you get when you arrive. It is who you become along the journey. The journey is what shapes them. Being on the side of the mountain, working hard every day. That's what makes our athletes great athletes and great people. So the habit here is intentional. They have to show up every day and know exactly what they need to do each and every day within their goal structure to get to where they want to be. And of course, that links to everything else we've talked about so far. The values that come out of this are strategy, planning, discipline, focus, and intent. Athletes who start thinking about the journey start thinking strategically. And as soccer coaches, we know this. We want athletes who are tactically intelligent, who start thinking about strategy. But we also want them to be disciplined and focused. We've all had it. We show up with a training plan, and our athletes have Mother Nature has a completely different idea in mind for us, and we got to throw the training plan out. But if we've got disciplined and focused athletes who are excited to be there and engaged with us and just really enjoying the journey, they'll help us get back to, okay, so weather messed it up. What can we do now? Coach, let's do this. And they come up with what they want to do because they have that focus to keep driving. How do we do this, coaches? We have to model that mindfulness. When we show up to practice, we show up to be there with them. When we talk about what we're accomplishing, we talk about what we're doing today to get there, to move that needle. It's as simple as we all show up and we have bad days. But we take those monkeys that are on our backs from that bad day, we toss them in the trunk, we grab our bag of balls and cones and everything else. We point at the monkey and we say, sit, I'll deal with you on the way home, and we lock it in the trunk. We step on that field, we are mindful. We have to be mindful of our language and start talking about journey-based language, process-based language, mastery-based language. We have to always model to our athletes the steps that we take to get to our goals. And we have to talk a lot about enjoying the time we spend together. Don't talk about, it's good to focus on what happens at the end of the season, but if we're constantly talking about, well, that tournament that's coming up in 3 weeks, they lose themselves and they don't stay embedded in the moment with you. So be mindful. And there's a great book out there, Amy Saltzman. She was on Way of Champions podcast. She's got a really good book out there called A Still Quiet Place for the Athletes that teaches mindfulness. I highly recommend it. But coaches, we model it first. Competitive nature. Athletes who are all athletes have a competitive nature, but they either see the competitor as an enemy or ally. When we see everybody else around us as an enemy who's had an opportunity to take our spotlight or take our starting position or look better than us or whatever, we start to seek the easy route. We take the easy route because we figure if we take that, we'll always be better than the people around us. We want to finish the skill. It's the famous picture of the athletes running lines, and one is stopped 4 inches short of the line while everybody else is touching the line. I'm going to get back first and show coach I'm the fastest on the team. There's a fear of mistakes. If everybody around you is out to take something from you, and this is it's an external thing, and everybody's your enemy in this growth process, and you're competing against enemies, then you fear making mistakes because you don't want to look bad in front of other people. And it creates the win at all costs mentality. I got to beat them down. Doesn't matter how I get there, but I have to win because they are the enemy. We want to shift our athletes into that ally mentality. Our opponents, our teammates, teams from our most bitter rivals, we have to see them as an ally that makes us better. You see, weapons are forged in fire, not in ice, not in water, we don't just pull a weapon out and it's as sharp as anything. They're forged and made in fire. So the only way that our kids can have the right weapons and be great athletes and great people is if they're cherishing the challenge, because that's where they're forged, in the fire of competition. We must teach our athletes to master skills. We have to create these mistake hunters who are excited about going out and finding these mistakes and fixing them. Remember, problem aware, solution focused. And Johan Cruyff is probably the greatest example, one of the greatest moves of all time. Right now, we're thinking he is the coach. He is what shaped modern soccer today. There's a lot of talk about that. When asked about his move, how many times did you practice it? When did you know it? When you unveiled it? If you saw the first time he ever did the Cruyff, which we all teach now, he basically broke ankles. The poor guy fell down on an international stage because Cruyff did such a great move. When they asked him how long he had worked on it when he came up with it, he said that at that moment, he said, I didn't work on it. I just tried it. He was a mistake hunter. He'd try anything and everything because if it didn't work, he'd figure out a different way to do it. And we have to create a compete at all times mentality in our athletes. So we need to shift the focus from win at all costs to compete at all times. That happens by this strive together habit. Athletes should be excited about pushing each other to be their very best and should be excited about taking on strong or stronger competition to make themselves better. They should never shy away from the competition, and they should see the role they play. We're not always going to be the starter or the best player on the team, but we play in a very important role for the greater good of the team, making each other and ourselves better. I always told the story about the lineman who won the Outland Award, who thanked the no name on the back of the jersey, league minimum, never travel guy that played across from him. And because every day that guy pushed him to be his very best. And even though nobody else knows him, that guy is the reason he was standing on the podium. But I had somebody come up to me recently and said, when I was in college, my best friend, who was the goalie on my club team growing up, she went to UNC, and this other player went to, was it Rutgers, I believe. They played each other in the national championship. And she said, my friend's team, obviously UNC, won a national championship, and my friend was the backup goalie. And she said, I went to hug my friend after the game, and I said, that was amazing. Congratulations, you're a national champion. My friend said, yeah, I'm just the backup keeper. And she said, well, she's the starting keeper because of the role you played. You don't think you didn't play a role every day in practice? You don't think you earned this national championship? You showed up every day and competed alongside all these other players, and they're great because you showed up and competed and gave your very best. Just because she started doesn't mean she doesn't think, thank goodness I had you as my backup to push me. What a great story. So in this situation, our athletes learn values like compete, challenge orientation. They look for these challenges, integrity. They start to become very honest about matching their words and their actions and their values together, because everybody around them, they're not enemies. I don't need to cheat to beat the people around me. I actually want to give my very best because they make me better and I make them better. That's just the way it works. And there's empathy. This is a very important one for athletes. Athletes who realize that they're in it together on their own team and even against their rivals, that they're in something together, begin to feel empathy for the people around them. And empathy is a very powerful motivator and value to have on a team and have in an athlete. People who understand empathy always see others in the best possible light. So what do we do, coaches? You've got to develop a mastery focus with your athletes. Give them the opportunity to find mistakes, hunt those mistakes down, and fix them. This might be as simple as don't move on until they've mastered the skill. I'll go back to, so athletes who have that mastery focus, we don't want them to start thinking about finishing the skills. We want them to get the skills right. We don't want them, I have always told the story about the guy that goes to the Zen Roshi, the Zen guru, and says, How long will it take for me to become Zen? And every time he says, I'll work harder and try harder to get to Zen, the Roshi says it'll take him longer. And he says, why every time I say I'm going to work harder to get there, you say it's going to take it longer? And he says, that's your first lesson. Because when you have one eye on the goal, you only have one eye on the path. Our athletes need to start just looking every day at what skills they can master. So for coaches, for us, it's getting them embedded in the idea that my son was just in the other room working on his math. We could have given him the answers, and he could have looked up the answers on his calculator or cheated, okay? But instead, we wanted him to master the skill. My wife said, you're doing cross multiplication and fractions, son. And she said, hey, I'm 25, we'll say. She said, I'm 25. She's a little bit older. And I'm still using this skill today. So this is something I want you to master and learn because you're going to use it for life. Are we talking to our athletes in that mindset of, hey, I want you to master this. I want you to get it right, not so that you can look better than the others or get it done first or I want you to get it right for yourself. So it's something that becomes usable in your arsenal. And for athletes, we know if they start to master skills in context, they're more likely to use them in games, and that's key. Let me close this up so you can all see. So let me finish up. I want to finish in like 10 minutes. I hope you have a bunch of takeaways. I see I have a question. Okay. I hope you have a bunch of takeaways, but I want to give you a few more takeaways with, okay, so what does this look like? I know how I can build these 5 psychological competencies in my athletes and start to develop these values, but these are just values. They're just words. And we have team values. How do we turn these team values into team behaviors, core behaviors through developing a culture of excellence? So I'll walk you through a few steps. 1, we have to create shared values. This isn't about us, coaches. Our athletes have to be bought into those values. If you have organizational values, that's fine. You can still do this. But you need to start talking to your athletes about what they value most. Who do they admire most in their life? And what about those people makes them so special? Who on the team do they admire and why? Those are great conversations for kids because they begin to build empathy and they begin to respect each other more. So you start asking athletes, who on this team do you admire most? I admire Susie. Or they can write it down. Why? Susie works hard, Susie's always honest, and Susie is always positive. Those are 3 values that matter to you then. And what you're doing with your athletes is once you have a list of values, you start to narrow down to the values that everybody seems to share as a team. If you have organizational values, start talking to your athletes about which ones of the organizational values resonate and why. Because what you'll have is you'll have a few athletes who say, oh, that value really resonates with me, and here's why. And once they do that, once they begin to own that value, other athletes on the team say, well, I never looked at it that way. If Susie values that, let me think about whether that value matters to me. And then once they're shared, so once it's not just us adults telling athletes what are important, but athletes are actually drawing out what's important to them, they're shared. And when we have shared values, that means everybody's bought in, or more importantly, everybody shares a purpose. And that's the first step in a culture of excellence, is everybody is there for a very similar reasons. If not similar reasons, they share the same values and they have very good vision of where they want to be as a person and as part of this greater group of people. So everything I do stops being about just me and starts being about this group of people, the legacy that we're creating. Secondly, we have to manifest those values. Once you have very strong values with your team, take some time. You can do them during training sessions. You can take a little time. You can send them home with homework. Take some time to talk to your athletes about what those values look like. What does hard work look like to you? What does honesty look like to you? What does discipline mean to you? Discipline, for instance, is an extremely vague. How do you tell a kid to have discipline? Do they walk militaristic? Do they make their bed every day? Do they have to walk up to you and stand straight and shake your hand and look you in the eyes every time? Maybe. What we started saying was it was a rule that socks had to be pulled up and shirts had to be tucked in. And we didn't want the sidelines being all junky. So our athletes always had to line their bags up, tuck in their shirts, and pull up their socks before they stepped on the playing field at practice and at games. And that was how athletes understood what discipline was. What's discipline? Well, bags are always lined up and our socks are all, why do we do? Well, it's just a habit that we do regularly so that we keep a clean area on the sideline and so that the game's not stopped and all these other things. So you manifest it. Next, you have to habitualize it through, like I just said, habits of excellence. Once you've talked to your athletes about these are our shared values, here's what they physically look like in the real world. What does a value in real life look like, lived and breathed? not just talked about on a web page or verbally. Now you have to habitualize it. We know what it looks like. We know what we need to do to show this value. We need to do it regularly. So you start to habitualize, and what you do is you add mantras to it even. So for instance, when I was at Soccer Shots, our coaches were supposed to show they were genuinely happy at all times by high-fiving and fist bumping every kid and parent they saw, whether they were in their class or not, because there was a chance that that kid not only would sign up for their class, but at school, we just don't know what kid's having a day. And there's a chance that one child we high five, that could have been the one moment, the one anchor to that, where we could have been the one adult who showed them we cared that day. What a powerful message. So our mantra was, high fives change lives. It became a habit. High fives change lives. And everybody on our team wanted to do it. And shared that with Soccer Shots this year at their national convention. And I got shirts and hand sanitizers and stickers and all the other Soccer Shots, all 180 some Soccer Shots across North America started instituting that from that one Soccer Shots here in San Diego where it started. Why? Because it became a habit across everybody. They got so excited about it. That's how we take a core value of being genuinely happy, bring it to life, and then make it something we do each and every time we step on the field. You model it as coaches. Are we modeling these behaviors? If, for instance, respect is one of them, how are we showing respect towards our athletes, towards the parents, towards our colleagues, or towards referees during games? How are we modeling those values? Because we can talk about values as a team. We can manifest them and create habits around them and remind our players, hey, high fives change lives. We always tuck our shirts in and pull up our socks. Always shake the referee's hand. We can do those habits. But if we as coaches stop modeling them, our athletes will learn from us and it'll all break down again. And we have to start back over. So we must model those things. And here's the beauty. We're going to mess up. And when you mess up and don't model it, when you make a mistake, oh my goodness, take that moment to apologize, to fix it, to show them mistakes are okay. If I make a mistake on a team value and I go, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, team, I messed up. Please accept my apology. I yelled at the referee and I shouldn't have. Respect is one of our value words, and I did not show respect, and I should have. You're teaching them that it's okay to make mistakes and recover. And it's okay for them to fix them and move on. So when we make mistakes, it's not all over. We have an opportunity to model how we recover and move on from those mistakes, and the value becomes even more important because they got to see an adult they admire and respect. Talk about the value, fix the problem, and move forward trying to model that value. Right, finally, encourage. And I said it already earlier, but this is one of the biggest things. When you have team core values, are you encouraging those as much as you're encouraging everything else you do? Are you giving shout outs to your players for being the player of the night for respect? Susie was the work hard athlete of the night tonight. Mikey was our integrity athlete because that ball went out of bounds, or honesty athlete because that ball went out of bounds and we thought it went out of bounds off at Johnny, and Mikey said, no, it hit my foot. It's out off me, so it's red ball. Way to show honesty. You get our honesty award for the night. Are we taking just 5 minutes at the end of the session and rewarding those values or encouraging those values as well? Because like I said earlier, if one kid gets the encouragement for a value, every kid on that team says, man, I want to do that value too, because I want to hear that encouragement as well. And now you not only do you have a team of kids who are seeking to be their very best physically, tactically, and technically, but you have kids seeking to be their very best as human beings on your team. What kind of excellence are we unlocking when people are physically, emotionally, and psychologically geared in the same direction for everything and pushing themselves to be their very best across all three of those domains? That's the key, is to encourage them. All right, I'm going to shut up because I've talked a lot. Hopefully you've got a lot of takeaways. My goal was to take the Warriors Not Winners theory, show you some science, but then give you something that you can take and do tomorrow, coaches, so that you walk away from this with actionable items. And I'm happy to take questions. Well, let me ask you this with raised hands or a quick note in there. Did you get something out of this? Were you able to take at least one thing away from tonight that you think will help you? Good, I'm glad to hear that. So here's the key. Scott Birkin has a quote that says, all progress hinges on the gap between those who will talk in private and those who will act in public. And I talked way too much tonight. So my hope is that you took at least one thing away and say, you know what, I can use this. This matters. You go out and you model it for the people around you. And that's where we start to build these cultures of excellence. And they stop being little pockets of one team or one club, and they become everybody fully engaged in what matters most about sport. Oh, yeah, okay, I did not scroll down. Hang on, folks. We do have some questions. How long does a culture shift take, or what are the indicators that you will see that tells you change is happening? So it can take, it won't be overnight, but it can be a very short period of time, or it can take a season or two. The key is to stay vigilant, stay intentional. Some of the indicators that you will see is just the behaviors of your athletes. When you start to see behaviors that start to mimic the values that you have, or you start to see your athletes hold each other accountable or use language that is geared around that intrinsic motivation or internal locus of control, then you know that they've started to shift. That's the big key is, and here's a great indicator. When the parents make comments that are with the culture, then it's beginning to take hold. So don't ignore the parents. They play a big role. Let's see, what else do we have? Thank you, thank you, thank you. How can we apply this to leading a league or club? Okay, so when I was at a small club of 500 but it can be done with larger clubs. When I was at a small club of 500 in Cincinnati, we did this. So we as a club asked all the parents and athletes what they thought were the most important values. Then we asked the coaches, and then we created a list, and then we called that list down to the club's values. And then we created habits around it. Again, same conversations. A lot of it was done via email or at training sessions and through surveys. And then we started encouraging those. So coaching clinics with our coaches actually talked about what we talked about. Not only were we talking about skills, but we would say, okay, in this situation, that's what we're looking for. So make sure you reward that skill, but also reward that athlete who made the pass because they were the hard worker that created it. Also reward the athlete who did this. And so you started to see the language come out of your coaches. And when the coaches, because you can train your coaches on a smaller scale, when your club leadership and your coaches are all on the same page and speaking the same language and doing the same things, and then your players start following that lead, then the parents start to buy into it too. That takes time. It took us probably a season and a half. I mean, they already had a phenomenal culture, but probably a season and a half before we really saw like this was an entire club living and breathing what mattered most to us. But I hope that helps. The steps of, you got to include everybody in the conversation. You start small with small leadership groups, and then you expand out and you just continue. Leadership of the club has to continue to be at tournaments, at league games, everywhere, reminding people of what they value most. And another big key is find guardians of the culture. Luckily, a couple of the teams had my wife. She knew what mattered most, so she would say to people, hey, that's not how we behave in this culture, and so you have to have those people who are willing to turn to their fellow parents or fellow athletes or fellow coaches and say, hey, this isn't how we are. So great question. If the values, you can have them set already. If there are values that really matter to you, sometimes you can shape a conversation, especially with younger players, because they'll toss things out to you and you can say, okay, that sounds to me like you're saying, and if you want the kids to have honesty as a value, you can say, that sounds a lot like honesty. So we'll use that as honesty, as our honesty value. But really, the players really need to be involved. And I've done it with as young as 8 years old. And again, sometimes at 8 years old, it's like, what's our value? Big pink unicorns who breathe fiery Skittles. Okay, well, that's not a value. So you have to be, you just have to keep shaping them. But even the little ones, they get really excited about being a part of it. And yeah, you're right. That one of the reasons why, still looking at that question, the younger the players are, that's why we have to really bring it to life in their language and something they know. Hey, you brush your teeth every day, right? And you just do it out of habit. You just wake up and brush your teeth now. You don't even think about it. And then your breath's not stinky and your teeth don't fall out. Well, that's a habit of excellence. That's a habit of discipline and good hygiene. So we're going to do the same kind of things on our team. So what does it look like to be a good teammate? What does it look like? And then you put it in their language, their terms, and you just keep reminding them, oh my gosh, Susie, you're such a hard worker. And that's one of our values. Way to go. Susie's the hard worker. And now even the young ones start to figure it out. For some goals to set, yeah, the problem is goals tend to be outcomes, right? So what we started to talk to our athletes about is making them more individualized is one of the things you can do. Or maybe it's instead of winning league or winning the tournament is we want to start, we want possession. You know, if you've got an app that counts possession, we want possession to be more in our favor by the end of season than it is against it. Or we want to start having more string passes together. That was one of the things that we worked on with our athletes, was passing strings. 4 passes or more was a string of passes. So how many strings could we create in a game? And so we'd come after a game and say, okay, we had 10 strings where there were 4 or more passes. So next session, next game, can we get 11 or 12? Can we improve on that? And now, even though it's an outcome goal, there's a process there. There's something that they can achieve each and every game, and there's a process. And we didn't reach it, then that's how we have these great discussions around, okay, where was the breakdown? How can we fix that? What did you see? What do you think? And now they're fixing the process along the way too. What else? It could be as much as, we want everybody on the team to display one of the values by the end of the season. So you can do value-oriented goals, which talk about by the end of the season, we want to we want to get to the point where coach doesn't have to remind us to shake the referee's hand at the end of the game or something like that. Or coach doesn't have to have conversations with us about our effort at work, at practice. A good team value is we want to be able to give our own feedback to each other. By the end of the season, coach, we want to be able to give feedback to each other so that you can observe and be a part of it, but we're the first to speak rather than you say, freeze, you made this mistake, what'd you do wrong? It's one of us goes, freeze, coach, I see this. We could do this differently. How can we do this? So, and believe it or not, even at young ages, if you work with Mark Bennett, we can get players to start to see that. I hope that helps. Oh, can I read the questions? Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, Guillermo. So hopefully from some of those answers you guys got, it was, what are some examples of goals to set? Should values be set or discussed with players, or both? How can we apply this to leading a club or league? Those were the questions that I answered. So apologies for not reading out the questions ahead of time. And then, as I promised, let's see if I've got it in there. There it is. If you're interested, I created tool cards with Jane Nelson of Positive Discipline. She's been doing it about 40 years now in the teaching and parenting realm, but she really wanted to bring it to sports. So the last 2 years, she and I have been working, and we created these tool cards that are a deck of 52 cards. They help coaches with communication, psychological issues, overcoming challenges, runners, language barriers. What else do we have? Fear of failure, bickering and fighting. All of those are cards. And it's on the card is actually a step-by-step process or suggestions for how we address that. And then we do workshops around them. The cards there's a sign-up list here, PDF Play. The general ones are not quite done. We do have a Soccer Shots version of the cards because they were the first organization to say, hey, we want to do that with you. And so we co-branded with them for the very first launch of them. And that's one of the things that I promised Matt I'd talk about. The other one is the X equation, something I'm coming out with in 2019, which is shifting completely away from the physical realm. We have an opportunity by installing the correct software in our athletes to create excellence in every athlete. And once we've installed the right software, the hardware runs better. And so the X equation is all about working with athletes and creating, increasing the opportunity for 3 very important components of the emotional and mental realm. It's based on psychology by Dreikers and Bloom and Maslow and the rest of them. And of course, big one is removing one of the greatest obstacles to excellence. If we can unlock excellence in our athletes, they'll be excellent in everything they do. So again, I'm just getting ready to launch it, but there's a sign up for that as well, thexequation.com. Let's see, any other questions, friends? Thank you so much, everybody.